In Genesis 2:17, God tells Adam that if he eats the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, on that very day, he would literally and physically die. And that just doesn't happen. Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion, and the clause in question at the end of that verse in Hebrew says, B'yom achalcha mimenu mot tamut, which literally means, on the day you eat from it, you will certainly die. And the last two words there, mot tamut, that's the verbal root for to die twice in a row, once in the infinitive absolute and once in a finite form, specifically the call form. And this is what's called a paronomastic infinitive, and it is used to emphasize the certainty with which something will happen. And the verbal root for to die occurs in a paronomastic infinitive construction 56 times in the Hebrew Bible, and every single time it refers to literal physical death. There's absolutely no case to make that it refers to anything else, to spiritual death, to dying a little bit on the inside, to being rendered mortal, or to anything else like that. So the consensus view, and really the only rational reading of this text, is that Adam would literally, physically die. Now, folks who are uncomfortable with the notion that God did not carry through with their threat have only one other recourse to try to dodge the plain meaning of the text, and that is to try to expand the temporal scope of this threat and to say that, well, maybe it was a day that lasts 1,000 years. And the first time that happens is actually in the middle of the 2nd century BCE with a book called Jubilees, which is kind of like fan fiction of Genesis and Exodus. And in chapter 4, verse 30, it's talking about the death of Adam. And it says, he lacked 70 years from 1,000 years, because 1,000 years are one day in the testimony of heaven. For this reason it was written regarding the tree of knowledge, on the day that you eat from it, you will die. Therefore he did not complete the years of this day, because he died during it. Now, Jubilees is probably basing this renegotiation of Genesis 2:17 on Psalm 90, verse 4, which says that 1,000 years are like a day to the Lord and like a watch of the night, which means about 3 hours. So we got different measurements, but this is just a rhetorical flourish to say that God's time is not our time. There's absolutely no occurrence of a temporal clause introduced with bayom, on the day, that can be shown to be deploying this notion of a day being 1,000 years, or like a watch in the night, which would only mean 3 hours. So that's not a legitimate reading of this. Jubilees is just trying to renegotiate the statement in here because the authors couldn't accept that God did not carry through with their threat. So both of the ways that people have traditionally tried to sidestep the plain sense of this text, either by arguing that the death there is something other than literal physical death, or by trying to significantly expand the temporal scope of the threat, fall to pieces once you look at the data. This is why the scholarly consensus is that God did not carry through with their threat. Now, I think this is because God is represented as the antagonist to humanity in the primeval history, Genesis 1 through 11, but a lot of people don't agree with that. Other scholars who also recognize that God did not carry through with the threat suggest that it's because God wanted to be merciful, or because God knew that humanity had to survive, or something like that. But however you rationalize what's going on in Genesis 2 and 3, God told Adam he would die physically, literally, on the very day that he ate from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and that just didn't happen. And the fit for this video is still DuckTales, woohoo!